So now we are talking fan-made documentaries. Now, this is something where, you know, maybe the studios didn't treat movies with enough respect in their DVD release. Maybe someone just loves a movie so much they want to know everything about it, and so they take it upon themselves to get a crew together and start contacting the actors and the behind-the-scenes people, and they make their own documentary. Sometimes these are picked up by studios and put on a DVD or Blu-ray re-release. Sometimes they're released by themselves, but it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. It's just started sort of recently. Looking back, the first one I can think of was about 4 years ago, and that was Halloween 25 Years of Terror. And some of the people that made it would go on to work on a couple of more fan documentaries. The director,
Hutchinson.
One of the producers was Daniel Farrens, and he would go on to work on some of these other big documentaries.
Well, also Anthony Massey is the one.
And with Halloween 25 Years of Terror, what it was there was a big Halloween convention, and they went out there and just filmed all the actors who were appearing, the directors and the writers who were appearing, and just got stories of each of the movies. Now, granted, it's not as in-depth as something like the original Halloween, where you're going to get big documentaries just for that movie, but with 25 Years of Terror, you're going to find the best information on Part 2 and Part 3, which have no bonus features on their DVD. And kind of, it got the ball rolling in the fact that it was bought by Anchor Bay and released as its own special DVD with bonus features of like extended interviews and panels from the convention. And I think it's a solid product. It kind of, you can tell it's sort of the beta version of the fan-made documentaries, and that a lot of big people from the series are missing. People like John Carpenter, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, that was the thing that sort of bothered me most, is that the stuff that the key people in the series unfortunately only appear through archival footage. And I mean, granted, it's as you said, a beta sort of example, but I would have liked to have heard them.
And also just the fact that it's all about this convention. Like, every background is just somebody against the wall of the convention.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. It's definitely worth picking up, and it got the ball rolling.
I mean, I think you got to also consider the rise of digital video as part of this, because the easier and more accessible everyone getting a camera is, the more stuff seems to have picked up. So that's got to be considered.
And then a big one that came out soon after that is The Shark is Still Working, which is about Jaws. And this movie I have been hearing about for years, and it still hasn't been officially released. It's played at a number of festivals. Spielberg has said it's great. People like Kevin Smith have said it's great. But for whatever reason, it has not come out. And I'm trying to think if Jaws has been announced for Blu-ray or not yet, but that's got to be the perfect opportunity for it to come out.
That would be great.
I really hope the Universal would, take the opportunity to buy the rights and include it on there, because I mean, Jaws already has a great documentary on the DVD back from the Laserdisc days, but I think with The Shark is Still Working, what they do is they get a lot of the fans who later became famous, people like Bryan Singer or Kevin Smith, who say that Jaws is among their favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, totally influential. I mean, we just spoke of how awesome it was a moment ago.
And then soon after that, we had Beware the Moon, which was the story of an American Werewolf in London. Obviously, I'm a big fan of this documentary. And this was one, it was directed by Paul Davis, who was a writer for Horror Hound, and it was a success story in that it was purchased by Universal, and it came out on the Blu-ray and DVD re-release of An American Werewolf in London.
Which is great.
Yeah, which is kind of, these documentaries getting out there is the big thing. Like, obviously, fans can try to release it on their own, but unless another big company buys it, it getting out there to the big masses is kind of hard.
Tough. A lot of them live on sort of that festival circuit and stuff like that otherwise. I mean, getting the rights to footage and all that stuff can sometimes be difficult, so it's clearly a passion project for all these people.
Exactly, and Beware the Moon, it just gets all this great information about American Werewolf that you can't really get anywhere else. Another one outside of the horror genre, which recently became kind of a big deal, was Don't You Forget About Me.
John Hughes.
Exactly. It was a kind of a story not just about the movies of John Hughes and interviews with the actors and fans, but also it was a story of the filmmakers traveling to go try to get an interview with John Hughes. It was filmed, obviously, before he died. Unfortunately, he didn't give them an interview, and also, unfortunately, some of the filmmakers are kind of annoying, so that sort of detracts from the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to not get a interview with sort of the key person involved in all this project. I mean, it's very, very secretive individual. But they did get interviews with a lot of the people in his films. You know, they got
Judd Nelson, was in there.
Andrew McCarthy, Ali Sheedy, all those people. They got people like Kevin Smith. They got Jason Reitman. I mean, they got a really good selection of people. I just wish they'd gotten that John Hughes one. That would have put it over the top.
Exactly. And then once he passed, they were able to sell it, and it's played, I believe, on Stars, and you can find it on DVD. Right. And then now we're getting into an area where like some smaller ventures are coming out, and fans are seeing that like, oh, these movies are really working. Maybe I'm just going to make it myself as well. And that inspired things like Autopsy of the Dead, which is a movie made about Night of the Living Dead, another movie which has been written about over and over again, but kind of the comprehensive story hasn't totally been told, and they have interviews with a bunch of cast members and crew members. This is one of the ones where they are going with a smaller distribution route, so I don't know how far it'll get out there, but for the fans of Night of the Living Dead, it's definitely worth checking out. Probably find some unseen stories on there from some of the smaller people involved with the crew. And then we come to, I think, what is at this point the crown jewel, the king of the fan docs, and that is Never Sleep Again.
Yeah, I mean, was it 4 hours or something?
It's a 4-hour documentary about all 8 Elm Street movies. The remake is not included and should not be.
And they interview everybody.
They interview over 100 people involved
everybody
with the series.
You want, they got.
Except for some of the bigger names who couldn't be bothered. People like Johnny Depp and Patricia Arquette. But I mean, all the directors are there, the writers, all the
really
supporting
important
actors.
people you care about are there. I mean, Heather Langenkamp, Wes Craven.
Yeah. And it's just so, you can tell the love, just the amount of info they get, how long it is. There's 4 hours of bonus features, and in the bonus features, they talk to the guy who drew the posters, the guys who did the music. It's like they really go in depth with this. And this is an example where the company's releasing itself, but the product is so good, it's doing great. And we should also mention that we got an interview with Tommy Hudson, who had written the movie, and also Heather Langenkamp. We interviewed them back at Crypticon, and you can find a write-up of that on our website.
Yeah, it was a really interesting conversation. Heather Langenkamp ended up being an executive producer on this project. So.
And then that movie being successful, then some of these other smaller ones, which have been around for a couple of years, are now being bought up by some companies. An example of that is the Psycho Legacy, which is coming out next week on DVD from Shout Factory. And this is another one of those instances where Psycho has a great documentary on its DVD, and a lot of people know about Psycho. Books have been written about it, but the sequels, nothing. And so this movie, you're going to find behind the scenes on the really underrated Part 2, but also the info on Part 3, which Anthony Perkins directed, and the made-for-TV Part 4.
And it has Anthony Massey as one of the producers of it, who worked on the Halloween one. I think he worked on a couple other ones, actually. So he's deeply entrenched in the horror world. Again, it's one of those things that, you get archival interviews with, like, Anthony Perkins and
well, because he's, of course, passed away a long time ago.
Right. But, like, again, those would have been the ones I would have liked to have really heard from, since they're...
I think with Psycho, like, honestly, the first movie is so well documented that I'm fine with the focus on the sequels. Like, that's what I'm really interested in. Like, Psycho 2, pretty much the special edition of Psycho 2 you're never going to get. Just buy the Psycho Legacy DVD and that makes it.
Yeah.
And since it's being put out by Shout Factory, it's going to be loaded. Be a nice little release.
But these fan docs are popping up all over the place these days. I mean, it seems like in the last 5 years, at least 90% of the ones we're talking about have occurred. So it probably only continue to grow exponentially. Right now, it's primarily focused in horror. Hopefully, that'll
that's because horror fandom is like the strongest there.
It's much more hardcore. But hopefully, it'll expand into other areas. I mean,
I know there are plenty of movies that I love that don't have big special edition DVDs. Like the studios don't want to invest the money or the time, and maybe it's up to the fans. If you want your favorite movie to know the story of it, maybe you just have to do it yourself.
Yeah, shows you that it can be done. So
exactly.
Go out and do it.
Yeah.
We'll probably watch it.
Definitely. And let us know what you think about these documentaries. If there's any coming up that we haven't heard of yet, MacGuffinPodcast.com.
It's the place with all the good stuff.
1000 can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Magneto can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Even Zod can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. It's tight, don't even try to buy the side style. Mr. Spock can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. The Wrath of Khan can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. The Borg can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Because I've got space game and it feels alright.